Welcome all. I am thrilled to have you here. So many of you, about 60, it's wonderful, for our Women's History Month poetry reading and conversation, featuring 3 contemporary Black women poets today. I am Rebecca Olander. I teach writing here at Westfield in the English department. And I am also the editor of Perugia Press. It's a small press that publishes full-length poetry books by women at the beginning of their publishing careers. One of our poets, Lynn Thompson, is one of the poets reading with us today. So first, I'd like to check in about a few Zoom items. We just mentioned the recording, so we'll move past that. Secondly, I recommend that you set your Zoom viewing to speaker view for the first half of the event. It's in your upper right-hand corner of the screen. And that way, as each poet reads, you can focus on the poems at hand and not on the audience. But we wanted to hold the reading and conversation like this, with being able to feel like we were in the room with each other instead of as a webinar. So that was intentional, but you do have to change your settings up. When we move into the conversation, it would be great to switch to gallery mode, and that I'll try to remind you to do that as we converse together. When you enter the Zoom room, you should be automatically muted. Please do keep your mics off while the reading and conversation is taking place. We will love for you to unmute during the conversation if you want to ask a question. To ask a question, you can raise your hand during the Q&A, but you can also just type a question at any time in the chat. So if one of the poets is reading and you're just really sparked by something that you want to know, you can put that in the chat and we'll keep track of that. So welcome, Yvonne. Hello. Let's see. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand or just add things to the chat. Let's see. I will try to circle back to your questions in the second half of the event. The chat is also open during the reading for comments. Beverly will be helping me to post poet bios, websites, links to purchasing books there as well. The best way to support poets and the small presses that publish them is to buy their books. And for Lynn's Perugia Press book, since I have control over the shopping cart on that one, that's Beg No Pardon, I put that on sale for $10 through the month of March. So it's in honor of this reading, and you can tell your friends about it up through March. Before we get to the reading at hand, I want to thank a few folks and departments in particular who helped to make today's reading possible. The reading is sponsored by the English department, the Department of Ethnic and Gender Studies, the SAIL program, and the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Thank you to everyone in those departments who helped to support this event along the way. Thank you also to the marketing department, especially Andrea O'Brien for the design of promotional materials, and to Beverly Army Williams, English department colleague of mine and Perugia Press board member, for help in coordinating the technical aspects of hosting on Zoom. Of course, thank you to each of the poets for taking the time to come and read and visit with us today. And thank you to each of you in the room for coming to listen in. It means so much to us to have this robust audience, especially on a beautiful day. Our program will feature 3 poets, reading, and then followed by a conversation between those poets and you, the audience. We'll begin with Amina Jordan-Mendez. We'll move on to Lynn Thompson, and we will close with Patricia Smith. And I'm just going to minimize my instructions and see how everyone's doing. This is wonderful. We have 68 folks here. So without further ado, so that we can get through our readings and enjoy those and also have time to talk, I'm going to introduce Amina. Amina Jordan-Mendez is a queer Afro-Latinx poet from Western Massachusetts. As a poet and educator, she has performed and facilitated nationwide for over a decade. During that time, Amina has been involved in developing youth leadership and arts integration for schools, organizations, and the community at large. Amina believes strongly in dynamic advocacy, passion, and diving deep. Currently, Amina is highlighting her poetry while working locally as a teaching artist and therapeutic counselor. I welcome Amina Jordan-Mendez.
Thank you so much. It is truly an honor to be here and be on a marquee with such incredible poets. I'm really grateful to Perugia Press. I'm really grateful to Rebecca. Definitely want to shout out Straw Dog Writers Guild. I am the Emerging Fellowship artist for this year. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here and I would love to get into my poetry. So if everyone can hear me okay, just put a thumbs up. Awesome. So I will be sharing pieces that no person has heard before. And I'm really excited to share them because some of them are a style that I'm trying out that are new. So I'm very open to feedback and I'm happy to share them here. The moon is a Black girl, admired when she is full, desired even when she a sliver of silver, reflection sought after, soft edges that spill between fingers and eyelashes, yet finds her dark side wholly unloved. A book of rhymes untouched, a beautiful mind unrequited. Celebrate me now before you see my unless. Only under your gaze I exist, sometimes wholly visible, indivisible to you who see my every phase, see through. Invisible when my darkness falls and fails to thrill you. The moon is a Black girl. No one looks an eclipse straight in the eye. The moon is a Black girl moshing at a concert, crying in the rain, accursed thorns stroke, hold, delicate petals, fall away you have never seen. The moon is a Black girl's song stuck in her head, over and over she goes, notes hanging in sky, falling nowhere as if deaf ears would have her anyway. But light travels, and so her image though. The moon is a Black girl, wrapping arms around herself as the world watches. What will she do next? This next piece is called Our Streets. F6 people white knuckle grip Black Lives Matter signs, protesting, marching up gentrified streets, stomping down war-torn avenues, the bones of our blocks. Like feet on spines, like knees on necks, like bullets in your sleep, what little bit we call rest. Revitalized by national debt and international investors that see the beauty in our bones kick us out. Plast over our homes with vinyl flooring, much more water resistant to the tear stains of our mourning. Paint over our pain with Black Lives Matter in bold yellow, stark white, but never do Black feet walk these streets again. Black Lives Matter until Brooklyn's diverse flavor needs to make room. Until downtown starts to look like Midtown and uptown's views get perused by white men in suits. A new coffee shop brings more than a new scent. We all prepare for what it entails, rent increase, even more police, until we are gone. All gone, then no police. No police to even see the Black Lives Matter flags strung up in newly renovated buildings. No police to harass the new and innovative tenants with a tendency to argue politics of Black life they've just so newly displaced. Move in and carve out Black space in this white invasion, chicken and waffles on brand new brunch menu, Hennessy wings and deluxe crab leg platter with the flavors of the Caribbean, trap house tours and less is more postings of a gem kept secret in the hood. Black resilience becomes aesthetic. Black life becomes transactional. Black bodies become inconvenient. Keep asking, showing, being so damn human. F6 people white knuckle grip Black Lives Matter signs, protesting, marching up gentrified streets, stomping down war-torn avenues, the flesh of their shame. Stomp hard, stomp loud enough and the fling of guilt feels almost righteous. Like feet on needles of pine, like knees on pew, like whatever helps you sleep at night. Like what would woke be without a bit of painful irony. This next piece I'm really excited to share. It's called I Am Not a Thing to Be Hurt. It's inspired by the stylings of Gil Scott-Heron, who is absolutely one of my favorite poets. It is for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, Mary Turner, and for my heart. I am not a thing to be hurt. Not a worm in the dirt, not a swift buzzard fly, not a bottle. I'm not a thing to be worked, corkscrew or red brick, luxurious poached fur, or a person on last dollar. I am not none of that there, though to be good and fair, those are things not deserved to be hurt either. I'm not a crab in a barrel, not an egg scrambled or boiled, not rotten or refuse. You're just used to having things stuck in the corner of your eye. You confuse Black life for your father's ghosts and the ghosts of your father. The point of a pin, a thin hair's moment when you collide into my picture, pointing targets where thoughts once were rooted. I am not a goat or an anchor, not brown countries or stock markets reaping off their sweat, not a skinning knife or gold jewelry, not a badge on taxi or murderer, just a sweet living thing, trying and trying to get over, caught in the corner of your eye. I am not an addict, not slut or unlearned, not an immigrant worker or kidnapped child. That is to say, none of us, not a single one of us, deserve to be killed to feed rat, bull, or reptile. We are not none of that there, none of that there, none of those childhood toys or field games. Not your twisted, vicious coming of age, postcard sent and teeming with pride coming off the backs of dead men. Not your deep-seated guilt, lip quiver and quip, all that pomp and circumstance. Your tears and actionless care are as plastic wrap and magnifying glass, weak, see-through, incriminating. We see you self-serve to trauma porn, clinging hard on computer keys as you watch me die through half-drawn curtains. No, we are none of those things. Not a nut or a screw or a mirror for you, not a mirror for your car or your soul. We are not dead pets, seeds, or a dream that you have the right to keep burying us. We are not your problem. We are not a problem and never in need of correction. Not an undisciplined child or animal in the wild, not a thing to be hurt at all. I am a being, a person, a Black woman with breath, wondering why, how came your list of things to be hurt grew so damn long, how it existed to be so damn tall, how long it will take for you to see your name on our list we throw up with fire on broken and crumbling palace walls. Thank you. So for my last two pieces, here we go. When a man asks for instructions. When a man asks you for an instruction manual on how to love you, tell him step 1, pay attention. Do not play the game. Do not flatly and courteously lay play-by-play directions for him to adhere. Do not answer every question you've already written while he skims the pamphlet of your love, for it is the last thing he'll ever listen to, and the last thing you'll ever hear. I learn as I play. Do not let him turn the living, breathing mountain of your love into a Mario Kart coal mine. Men are too spoiled with games, with how they've oversimplified the world into check boxes and checklists and owner manual commodified bullshit. Does he deserve your secret ingredient and recipe to your love, and how it's never the same twice? Don't let them track you like athlete statistics, speak on you in deep throaty tones, gaze upon you with flat gray eyes, cage and corrupt you with tiny words like high maintenance, cute, needy, bitter. Don't let them learn the cheat code to your forgiveness, being exhaustion like flames. His gaslighting no longer ringing the alarm. Do not let the game be played at all. Game is what colonial man built to win, writing all the rules and disqualifications. Saw a vast multiverse and decided it was too much work learning to sing and instead chose to dissect and call it chord, like around the throat of the world, like a leash and claim himself leader, owner. Do not let a man that holds no song sacred find a map of you, siren. Do not let your heart be the fishing trophy on his wall, the light he uses above his kitchen stove, the light in his vanity mirror, the night light in the bathroom for his midnight piss. This last piece is called Thin Ice, and I wrote it after My father, who absolutely loves nature, went for a springtime walk on a frozen pond and fell through. So this is my poem of my experience visiting him in the hospital, which has never been the ending of a happy story. Thin ice. Then the smell hit me. Mommy never the best at directions, so lead the way I do. But when the smell hit me upside, made me pivot on a dime. Nah, I don't think it's this way. Really don't want it to be. Antibiotics smell like freezer burnt strawberries, the sun rotting them in a foam cup turned on its side, a swivel in the wind, posturing. It's terrifying. If you're looking for your loved one, though, you've got to follow your nose. Disorienting. Hospitals. All look, taste, feel, smell. Like smiling in the face of the one you beg would just stay and heal. Just heal. They know it's hectic and desperate, that smile. Turned on its side, on rotation, posturing for final moments. It's disorienting. My father sits up and smiles a spacey tooth smile through a beard that seemed to gray overnight, or had it been that long. Looking softer than it ever did. His kisses used to feel itchy and pushy, but a blessing all the same, and for the never knowing when I would feel it again. He grins big, like all love he ever wanted, my mother and me an oasis. A mirage? Not enough to keep him safe necessarily, obviously. The only thing worth being sober for, he says. The way we do fleet and in and out, our moments are so too often short-lived. Dad does yoga and still sits on the floor at 61. I love him for it. Strumming blues and rusted orange yellows on the guitar. He sits cross-legged. He sits on the cushy hospital bed, contentedly cross-legged, and I know one day this will only be in my mind. I never wanted so bad to be a guitar in my father's lap, to curl up and be held by the father I never quite had, that I'm too grown now to have, probably actually too scared. We are too scared, hurt in the same ways. Fathers can do better, and children can try harder. It was the passing moment that hit me again and again. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Oh, Amina, it's our honor. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful, beautiful reading. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. Yes, stunning, phenomenal, all those words in the chat. Thank you. Yeah. All right, I'm going to introduce Lynn Thompson now, our second reader. I feel full already, so this is just such an exciting afternoon. And welcome everyone who's come in during this time. Lynn Thompson, our second reader, is the author of Start with a Small Guitar and Beg No Pardon, winner of the Perugia Press Prize and the Great Lakes College's New Writers Award. And Jane Hirschfeld selected her third book, Fretwork, for the Marsh Hawk Poetry Prize in 2019. Recent work appears or is forthcoming in Colorado Review, New England Review, Pleiades, Black Warrior Review, and the 2020 Best American Poetry, among others. She sits on the boards of directors of Cave Canem and the Los Angeles Review of Books, and she has just been appointed to serve as the next poet laureate for the city of Los Angeles. Welcome, Lynn Thompson.
I almost forgot to turn on my speaker. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Becky. And I just want to say, I've been asked a couple of times what I thought I wanted to be as a young poet, and I never had a really good answer. And now I'm just going to simply say Amina Jordan-Mendez. And I think that will be the answer. That was an amazing reading, Amina. And I'm also thrilled, some of you know that I'm friends with Patricia Smith, so I'm really excited that we get to share microphone together this afternoon. My reading is really going to be a tribute to Black women, starting with a tribute to the ancestors. Overnight bag, blue with broken handle. Mother's old overnight has half a handle, held in place with a rusty safety pin, and the scent of where that bag has been still clings to the silk several decades on. A corroded pin clasps family stories, her 4 boys' grade cards. Photographs, of course, some with no label and well past recognition. Immigration papers, hers, her husband's. Hidden behind the bag's top stitching, securing a mirror too speckled to give off a proper reflection, a transit stub for the city of New Orleans, the train bound from Chicago to the Big Easy on a spring day, 1929, speeding south as the darker race ran north. She had not run exactly because she knew inexactly who she was. She may have squirmed in an unyielding seat and eyed her baby with a sigh, her baby being the only reason she couldn't lounge in the whites only club car. None of that mattered. She was on her way to the land of filet and jambalaya, of King Creole and Saturday nights that lasted well past Sundays, nights when she black-bottomed in Congo Square. She would leave her son with a neighbor, then let that neighbor's boy stroke her cheek and throat with jasmine petals. She'd forget about her husband and South Side Chicago. Of course, she could not stay. Seed of mango, seed of maize. I'm reading this particularly for Becky and Susan. It appears in my first book, Beg No Pardon. I saw one of the grandmothers only once in a photograph. Short and sturdy she was, a black Carib with a forehead wide as the sea that kisses Port Elizabeth and a nose broad as the nostrum of Admiralty Bay. Breathing deeply, her breath was fume of coconut and allspice, mango and frangipani, blackbird and blue sky, was the Isle of Beckway. She conjured a daughter, then jinxed another, and they bedeviled 5 daughters between them. And I am one of those, flying fish. The other grandmother I composed from myth and half-told stories. She was a red Cheyenne, scorched earth, much chased, sported a thick reed of braid pulled off from her forehead wide as Dakota before it was north and south. She hisses warnings across 10, then 10 times 10 more years to a son who reshapes them for me in my dreams, sometimes in my waking. As flute, blue maize, dance of the sun, she comes, crow on the wing, singing up the ghosts. And I am one of those, a ghost, singing. And finally, this one, cryptogram. She came back again last night in my dreams. She lounged atop my library of scribbles. I don't know how she got there, but while I wanted to speak of joy, Mother only wanted to speak of collapse. Neither of us said love, that burr and mystery. She arrived without, unclothed, salt in each hand, caught in the wrong. My knees bent to an unnecessary apology, an infinite sentence, no hyphen. It was a long night. Moonstone and the rush of her. And now I want to read some newer pieces, and I want to start when I do read with her, I do love to give a little shout out to my buddy Patricia. This poem is a cento, which is comprised of lines of her poetry from A Dazzler and Tea House of the Almighty. Dazzling, but a hole in the ceiling, wily dervish, hurtle, fly, crawling on knees toward love. It's almost laughable, this wading through, wily dervish, hurtle, fly, slow sputter, four-syllable words. It's almost laughable, this wading through the sugar of such leaving. Slow sputter, four-syllable words, one syllable slinks, becomes several, the sugar of such leaving. All of me thinner than when I began, the one slightly off center. But the heart can't see anything crawling on knees toward love, the one slightly off center, a hole in the ceiling. Voice. Say, woman, you will slide through a transom. Say want or yellow or terror. No one hears. Or say nothing. That says it. Say yes and then try to stop saying it. If you can't, say no and poor. How poor. Say never, but that's not quite it. Say always, and hundreds of children will laugh and say Simon says, and all of it will sound foreign if you have forgotten how. Say success, then ask, what was the question? Say history, claim, say wild. The birth mother wears a costume her daughter will never fit in. Some thought the mother said taproot. Some thought that woman said resigned, but her daughter mouthed immaculately conceived. Some thought the mother said perdition. Some thought she said hocus pocus, while her daughter wrote parables, wrote charms. Some hoped the daughter would say, yes, honey, although they suspected the daughter said wishbone, knew she would deny everything, slipping into, out of. Some understood the daughter's need to be alone, her fear of sorcery. They only knew her as braid of ginger and sea salt, as weightless darling and origami. Some have heard her bark and bark and bark. Some have heard her arrange a resistance. Banjo is a dark girl, undiminished barrel, many floodplains, life flame, elegant turn, consideration of a still kind, color up on her haunches, a hubbub remembering when blood cannot, love being more than the only miniature. Each nightfall chooses and is injured. Carib women know this. Sun up until moon crest. They kneel, but their tongues are ever feral and unchecked. This piece is for Amina for her wonderful rendition, but written originally for Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor. Dirge for murdered Black girls. How lovely the ruins, our beloveds. You, ever you, how ruined the lovely, are America's most unbearable fear, subject to stealth, to a Judas kiss turned ambush. How lovely the ruins. We can't pretend we don't see, or could have been anything they wanted, snuffed out like wicks. How ruined the lovely. How anguished the left behind, the mothers, mourners, the others just like them. How lovely the ruins, the promise gone from should have been, the girls laughing, dreaming of, calling out, see you later. How ruined our once lovely thoughts. We know this anguish continues to happen from Chattahoochee to the City of Angels. How ruined the lovely. Ruins who some think unlovely. How? Approach memory as if I am ready, as if I am no longer seed separated from her tree, as if any long black night has her own intentions, although I am no longer bound by them, as if I am a clock in Dolly's persistence of memory, dripping from a thin nude bark. Then come with cumulus in your hands. Come as the stranger you are to find me stranger still. Still, when you arrive, notice the end of what was just moments before. As you approach, ask, what is that scent? Sky or rosemary? Wet dog or wild hanker? Stones. After hours of hauling stones, I want to be touched. The stones I carry are igneous, metamorphic, are limestone, granite, conglomerate, coal, yet you say you don't believe I've hauled Earth's outer layer, its crust cake, because you think a rock, is mineraloid matter. What is that you carry? Water, weight, and after, what is it you wanted that you want still? I wanted once, thought it would panacea. Thought it would panacea. I thought it would be original color, rust of shack torn down, blue oyster, would smell more piquant than a nuclear blast. But I'm Mary Contrary, and we are all the worse for fairy tales. I want to be touched on shin, on cheek, on small of back, past tension, or if there is no mercy, there'll be hours of hauling stones, of unwanting, neither marble nor caress, only lava, cooling. And this is your 2-poem warning, Patricia, so get ready. First person. A sentence begins with he, and before it ends, hyacinth and seashore, where time is a rubber band and up is always upended. Sentence wants, eventually, to paragraph, to run wild with Johnny Walker Red, to go for the prison break. Not once does sentence say love or concede to fixed seasons. No fire or baby bird, neither famine nor the happy ending. Just sentence, erect, on both of her legs. And I'll close with this one, which is an ode to Joni Mitchell and incorporates some of her lines, also a cento. Thank you so much for listening and having me. Sorry for the little hiccup, I had some feedback. Sometimes the light. Blue, here is a shell for you, and sometimes there will be sorrow, but I have no regrets, Coyote. We're captive on this carousel of time. Oh, but sometimes the light. Blue, here is a shell for you and varnished weeds in window jars. Why did you pick me, and do you have any regrets, Coyote? Buy your dreams $1 down. Heed the trumpet's call all night. Blue, here is a shell for you because the more I am with you, pretty baby, I'm like a black crow flying, dark and ragged and no regrets. Until love sucks me back that way, dreams and false alarms. But Blue, I've got a shell for you. What point regrets, Coyote? Thank you.
Oh, I'll never get used to the Zoom quiet. Like I want it to be loud in the room. So we'll all come on at the end and make some noise.
Yay, Poet Laureate.
Woo! I know. Woo!
Thank you, Patricia.
Oh,
Lynne, that was great.
the Angelinos are so lucky. Lynn, that was beautiful. I could listen to you all afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, it is my pleasure to welcome Patricia Smith. Patricia Smith is the author of 8 books of poetry, including Incendiary Art from Northwestern University Press, winner of the 2018 Kingsley Tufts Award, the 2017 LA Times Book Prize, the 2018 NAACP Image Award, and it was a finalist for the 2018 Pulitzer Prize. She also wrote Should Have Been Jimmy Savannah from Coffee House Press, which was the winner of the Lenore Marshall Prize from the Academy of American Poets, and Blood Dazzler, a National Book Award finalist. She is a Guggenheim Fellow, an NEA grant recipient, a former fellow at Civitella Ranieri, Yaddo, and McDowell, a professor in the MFA program at Sierra Nevada College, and a distinguished professor for the City University of New York. It is my great pleasure to welcome Patricia Smith back to the Valley virtually. The last time I saw you in person might have been in Holyoke when you were accepting the
Oh, wow.
Social Justice Writing Award.
That was great. I had fun that day. Hi,
Welcome.
everybody. I'm sorry, I had my my thingy off and on, my little avatar, because, and I usually hate to do that, but I was in my car and it was distracting, but I got my second vaccine. Now I can do the same things I was doing before I got it. Okay, so I'm going to, Lynne, that was great. Amina, I can't even talk to you. It was so good. It was so good. And you guys are perfect duo. I loved hearing your voices kind of parallel to each other. I am going to read a poem about my mother. When I was young, which was a long time ago, I used to buy my mother the same gift all the time. It'd be in the corner store, and it was a little dark blue bottle of perfume. It was called Evening in Paris, and it cost like $2.45 or something, but I thought it was the best thing in the world. It smelled like an explosion at a perfume factory. So this is a poem about my mom and Evening of Paris. Okay. Burly Alabama gal called it smell good, and she sloshed that flashy slap of Evening in Paris over and into everything. She spritzed it into bath water already reeking of 2 violet bubbles, used it in to finish off her stringy hair once it was suitably tamped down with oil and iron, soaked cotton balls and popped them into the corners of bureau drawers crammed with Baptist-sanctioned panties and Playtex. Chicago bent North Star. Chicago said, stink pretty. That flowery ruckus, dime store exotic, clung to my mother, bled into her skin, pummeled the air she'd escaped to. It trailed her like the train of a shredding gown, to the corner store, to the check cashing place, to the front pew of Pilgrim Rest Missionary Baptist Church, to the assembly line of Leaf Brands Candy Company, where she stuffed sugared shells with toxic chocolate. Everyone knew every place my mama had been, and I knew better than to ask her if she even knew where Paris was, or why its evenings boomed the way they did, or why those midnight blue bottles of her perfumed parfume were always lined up right next to the register at Woolworths, each one cheaper than a back-to-school pack of notebook paper. Chicago said, reek like a city girl. Chicago said, reek like a city girl. So for years, she pumiceed rough feet raw to rid them of that dogged Alabama dust, flinched every time an ain't never been or I done been had slipped out into the world around her tongue. She slathered on creams that steadily dyed her unearthly bright, plucked nappy hairs from her chin, scarred scalp with lye and fiery combs, studied at the prim pink feet of Lucille Ball. Chicago screeched, you looking like new money, Annie Pearl. You smell just like a white woman. But Chicago lies out of habit. It has always outright lied to its migrants with its rugged mouth. It lies like a head of processed hair under the red lights of last call. If you want truth, press your nose against the landscape of a West Side woman. Smell the Saturday morning Chitlin assembly line, the spew of roach spray, that jar of grease in that can by the stove. Smell that double Dutch sweat, pressing oil, scorched roots, and the burn scar. Smell that dimming remnant of dust, the unmade Murphy bed screeching into the wall, that trapped mouse skittering rumba in the hallway, the wild red price tag of discount Remy. Chicago says, ain't no otherwise to you, woman. Smell a West Side woman and you will no doubt ride the sugary stench of the side of the city she is. You will smell evening in Paris and way too late in Lawndale, twice fried perch glued with hot sauce to its cardboard box, Wonder Bread dripping with scrapings and pot liquor. You will smell mothers obsessed with Sears catalogs and reaching for countries they will never see. You will smell every lie Chicago ever told them, all those bladed syllables that named them holy and made them impossible to love. Okay, thank you. And this poem, I don't think I'm gonna be able to read it too much longer. It's kind of a goodbye 2020 poem. And I was having a discussion with maybe a group of women who were saying how much they miss touch. With some of them, it meant touch, some of them, it meant sex. And so I started out to write about that, and it turned into kind of a 2020 poem with that kind of rumbling beneath it. So with that strange way of describing the poem, let me call it up. Okay. And never mind, I'm just gonna start it. You once believed it's only touch I want until what you were given was too much of it. Those toxic droplets drift and swerve, infringing on your blood, corrupting it, their needled clutch the same as murder. It stuffs your lungs with mud and scrapes your buckling throat with all its fitful blades. The virus is a flood of mercy's absence. In its lethal thrall, you pray in tongues you swear are not your own, a frenzied moan that mangles verbs you long assumed were God. Lord, I atone for my whole life, you say, an outright lie that won't unlatch your breath and teach it how to know the air again. On fire, would George's body burn to trifle in its quest to writhe and flail, to twist away? Perhaps we all should learn the firepower of a knee, the knife-like wail of boulevard beneath a face, how best to die, hashtagged and wide aloud and pinned like prey and folding slave into his voice. Sir, I cannot breathe. And did you hear him say, I want my mama, like a man who saw his mama's face, dead as it was, and reached out for her Baptist heft with all his whole raw and thinning throat, a phlegmy no shit screech that trembled till his mama rose to see her man-child crawling home, his neck beneath a knee. The fire eats the firewood gone. It haunts, devours a whole bodega's quivered shell, and scars the hands of marchers as they chant, insist they matter. The hissers swell. These boys are proud. Their pink distended guts are jailhouse inked with shaky silhouettes of whores they claim to love, prancing swastikas and misspelled spit. It is their comic threat that grants them spine. Those bandoliers, the bullets lined up and aching forward, screeching names you recognize, the names of your brothers and your sons. The guns are hefted, ludicrous, and almost never taking aim, although the boys swear they are one with the wrath of God. Alone with this sheer repetition, you must turn away from the pile of bodies, all the lost and becoming gossamer, the fallen, spurned, the unacknowledged, tubed and ventilated, tossed to the hallway, the heralded, the walked the hell away, the panther and the valentine, bespectacled justice, careening mamba, the trouble, good and necessary. No, every morning does not have to be crafted of their names. It is only the idea of heaven pressing hard upon their heads, bulging with their bodies. And this is only if you're Black and were raised Baptist. Child, you will die of counting the dead. They are in their silk beds, Beneath the wheels of patrol cars, there is even one waiting for you at the end of your life. You turn to face only yourself. You see that even the air is aging you. The air is what you need to live, but is also a compromise of killers. Air is haven for ancient snot, knife to the polar cap, home for the ash that dances up from the skin of the dead. Try not to think of the wars air has waged on your body, how hard you trusted its nurture, how you must now mask yourself against it. It's said that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but what if what makes you stronger can't stop, won't stop trying to kill you? Or we're being silly. Take a deep breath. Breathe. What? You can't breathe out again? I warned you. The man is a crude lyric trapped inside a mouth throbbing with rot. Whenever he speaks, what tumbles out is always instruction, rancid as sewage, dictation for his overwrought soldiers, monosyllabic gospel from the god of Oxford and wingtip, the god of washed money and atmospheric tax bracket, the god of men who see no need to wash their legs because suds, like money, flow from the top and disappears everything beneath. He knew a black man once, oh, what's his name? Oh, good old what's his name, who suckled his children, no, who gleamed a mean boot, who bowed reverently at perfect angle, who probably hated him, who spat phlegm in his whiskey, who still waits for him, hiding that same fist in his pocket, that same blade behind his eyes. You cannot open a door that has never been closed. Don't misconstrue what is waiting for us. Someone will call you nigger this year, same as the last. It will be whispered with just a tinge of spittle. Someone will say your American name, African-American man, African-American woman, into a cell phone. You will be reported for walking, for eating, for breathing toward the wrong subdivision, for insisting upon your given name. In Long Island, New York, when they see you coming, two boys will pose, laughing, one with his knee on the neck of the other. In Alabama, where your mother was born, a young girl holds the sign, Black Lives Splatter. And it will look as if someone, maybe the girl, flung fun droplets of red paint all over the placard and is proud of her work because when the camera finds her, she grins. God damn it, she grins, and history binds your hands before you can slap her. Your utter blueness, wretched like the South in 1950, you've unearthed gut bucket, brown liquor music, the needle romancing that same growling groove. Suddenly you know why Aretha took on all that body on top of her own, why that woman shot Sam Cooke, what Whitney saw in the water. Your government has cursed you with solitude, threatened you with no less than a slow, breathless end to your days. So you torch sage and converse with all the nappy-headed ghosts you have gathered, and with both the sun and the moon, who are already so done with your ass and its endless diary. For months, it's been about you and your keyless crooning, songs with new revelations about bitches, songs with no discernible words, songs about lonely people so damned out of love with their aloneness, but if they merely spoke to someone else, it could kill them. Is this 1950? Damn, all we ask is that we stop magically slipping cuffs and murdering ourselves in the musty back of squad cars, that they stop finding our bodies in the middle of the goddamn dairy dripping from the arms of trees, that skittish cops don't see cocked guns in our faces, in our cell phones, in bottles of soda, in the stairwell, in our mama's yard, in mixtapes, in our wallets, in our beds, behind our closed doors, through our windows, in our empty upraised hands, in the backs of our heads. We've run out of space on our memorial sweatshirts, the ones that name all those slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, all the times, Mama Lucille, that something has tried to kill us and has not failed. We have run out of room for the lineup of names their mamas gave them, trusting they would live long enough to own them. And the font gets smaller and smaller. Soon we will run out of shirt. Then we will run out of skin. Then we will run out of breath. A tongue can burst open borders. A pen can make a whole throat, can take down the words of a father who is griot on the front porch, who hauled his verbs all the way from Arkansas, and his northern daughter throws back her head and wails that same music to the rafters. And the Reverend Thomas or the Reverend Williams or the Reverend Green will tell you that they write with the hand of God, that their impossible rollick and moonwalk on Sunday morning is the Lord's message messing with their old bones. You see, a tongue can make saviors. Don't let anybody human put their hands on your poems, because what you need to say, you need to say. Come, it will be hard. You'll scream. You'll curse your mask and rip it off. You will have to remember how to breathe, full and fluid. Your first attempts will be laughable, gulp, choke, and sputter. Thousands will call you a fool. You will still see enemy adrift in the air. You are part of a conspiracy. See, you did not die, and neither did I, they'll say. There are a million more dangerous things. Hell, everything more or less is out to kill you. Yes, it is, you say. Then you will smile. Nothing has changed. How hard can it be to crack the stubborn rust of us? We often think of a new year like a page turning, but what if the words are foreign, crackling under their own weight, scripted in a fresh and feral blood? I really just want my root back. I want my Alabama mother, who I do not love, not to die. I want to fit all your wriggle and strain into the circle of my arms, and I want to not die before loving all of you wide and aloud. I want the page to not to turn until we have wrestled control of the story away from those who would trumpet it as their own. Think of the many who have pretended our skin. I said I do not love my mother, and it was a long, long road to saying that. Sometimes the scenery along that road was too much to take. Sometimes there was nothing to see. What rides your skin like the crave of a kiss? Let's say that in this year, as in all others, you strive to be happy, to drench yourself in shea and rosewater, to listen only to music that threatens your heart and shows you why to weep. Let's say you don't give this new year a number, but a reason to bother you awake. Write poems that slice into your sleep, roughly shoving your dreaming aside. Remember that happiness is truth twitching beneath all its mad disguises. If you do not love your mother, say that. If you cannot love your father, say that. If you do not love yourself, say nothing. Just give me time to reach you. So now you know that touch is what you want. It's firewood for your body. It's the burn that eats the firewood gone. Inside your haunt, alone with repetition, where you turn and turn to only face yourself, what you become is lyric trapped inside a mouth that cannot open. Don't you misconstrue your utter blueness, wretched like the South in 1950. Damn it, all you ask is for a tongue to burst your borders, just to come so hard you stutter and melt your mask to shreds. So hard you crack the stubborn rust that rides your skin. Your crave is to be kissed. In 2021, I wish you this. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks.
Patricia, I'm speechless.
I just did the same thing. I was like, Patricia.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, all of you, everyone.
Now you see why she drives everyone crazy.
Hi, Lenny.
Hi, honey. Fantastic.
Thank you, sweetheart.
All right, so you rocked all of us, as Janelle says. I put a little placeholder I wrote earlier, and I was just ready to let it go, and it's just flown up the chat screen where we can't see it anymore, which is, please put your questions in the chat if you have them. We have a half an hour to talk to these three amazing poets and hear about their writing process, their friendship, their advice for you as young poets in the room, what they're reading, what they're thinking, how they're getting through this time, whatever you want to ask them.
Oh God, what's for dinner tonight?
What's for dinner?
Because I was just thinking about that.
Are you feeling okay after this shot? That's
yeah,
what I
I
want
feel
to know.
fine. My arm's fine. Everything's good.
Amazing. All right, I'm checking out the chat, and you can also raise your hand, but I'm
It's hard to see those hands.
yes, it is. There's 4 screens of you.
Which is fantastic in and of itself. What a
Absolutely.
turnout.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
Yeah, there are
It's
giants in the
amazing.
room, says
On a
Yvonne.
weekday afternoon.
Exactly.
All right, well, I'm gonna, let's see. I can kick it off. I
You guys need some questions.
would like to know about your advice for young writers. We have a lot of young writers in the room, folks who are taking poetry and creative writing and fiction. And I wonder if you have any words, not necessarily advice, but words for the young poets. Yeah. Oh, and there are questions coming. And Abby says, when
words for the young poets. Does anybody remember Walter Brennan? See, okay, good. Thank you so much, because I was going to feel so. Walter Brennan was like this. Oh, it's like, yeah, it's words for the youngins. I'll tell you something. What's really great nowadays is that, and it's been sort of enhanced because of the pandemic. One of the few good things about the pandemic is you can see anybody. You can hear and see anybody online now. I mean, you can go back, you can listen to Gwendolyn Brooks if you want. You can, there's so many, there's archives and just so many places to go, so many readings you can see live. And what I used to say is go to as many open mics as you can. The poets that you don't think you're gonna like, watch them. I mean, everybody. And now you can actually do it. And one of the ways I've been doing is going on Eventbrite and just putting in poetry. And then there's all these readings that you can just line up, and I put them right in my calendar. And, I can get 2 or 3 readings a day. You take your pick. I guess because I started by getting up on stage and doing poetry, and I started a long time ago in the poetry slam. So I've never drawn those lines like this is slam poetry, this is this. We're all storytellers. And then whatever way it makes sense to tell that story at whatever given time, that's what you do. So I'm still in contact with a lot of people who are coming up that same way and coming up through spoken word and all that, and feel that I would never change that direction. I loved being there first, and then kind of moving into, for lack of a better term, you would call more traditional structures and things, just so I could figure out how to blow that up. But yeah, just listen and read as much, buy big anthologies and to journals, and just read things you don't think you're going to be interested in, because that will let you know that it will stress the connection that we all have. That you have, you say academic poets and page poets and all that, and those are just labels that came from somebody else. We're all doing the same thing. We've all got the same words at our disposal. And there is nothing, you can read all the books you want and go through all the craft books you want, but there's nothing like hearing when a poet reads their own poetry. There's nothing like hearing that. So I think follow all those avenues now and just listen to as much poetry as you can, and to discover new people. I discovered Amina. I mean, I didn't discover Amina. I discovered Amina today. I didn't. I will take credit for that. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm just in awe and so inspired and happy that y'all are even saying my name from your mouths. So that's a start. But yeah, I would say for any young writer, similar to Patricia, I mostly started off performing on stage and doing slam poetry. And after a while, my focus became the audience. and became, what do they want to hear? What will they like? What will score high, right? But I would really stress y'all to not do that. Your first allegiance and your first loyalty is to your heart. No matter what you're writing about, who you're writing for, who it's to, how old it is, how good or bad it is, your first allegiance is to your heart. So write what makes your heart sing, write what makes your soul light up, and that will clear the path for you. Anytime that you feel stuck or feel like, am I supposed to be doing this? Just continue to write for your heart, because that's what really matters. And that actually helped me to pick the poems I chose today. I was like, oh, these are going to be confusing. This one is still new. It's not entirely done. I was like, but my heart right now, like, why would I not share that? So that's my piece of advice to new writers.
Beautiful. How about you, Lynn?
And I'll apologize. I seem to be having connectivity problems and I'm going in and out. So if I cut off mid-sentence, it's probably not that I'm saying anything important, but I wanted to expand a little bit on what Patricia said in terms of reading broadly, not just in case folks thought it was just poetry. Read map books, read geography, read religion, read philosophy, because all of those things will sneak into your writing as well and have an impact on you and on your writing and what you're thinking and how you're perceiving the world around you. I mean, I said to a class yesterday, read the back of cereal boxes. You'll find a phrase that would be perfect for that poem that you didn't know that you really wanted to talk about, you know, wheat checks in. Just to mix it up a little bit in your poems. But yeah, read as broadly as you can and never give up. Never give up. And know that your poems are your own. Even when you think they're finished, you can change them. They belong to you. So just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. When you think you've done it really well, do it again.
Well said, all. We have amazing questions coming in. Thank you all for those answers. Abby had another question. Thank goodness Abby had the same question I was bumbling to ask, because I really want the students to have their voice in the room with their questions. But Abby had another question about writer's block. You know, do you get writer's block? Do you have remedies for helping yourself to write when it's not really just working out for you naturally?
I have decided not to believe in writer's block. And when I can't seem to put anything together on the page, I write out other people's poems, that I admire or that I've just come across and just learned about, just to see how did they do it? How did they put one word after another word to arrive at a particular place? I rewrite old poems. I consider reading part of writing. So I just don't believe in writer's block. I'm not having it. The truth is, yes, of course, there are times when you feel really stuck. And the poem I read, Dazzling Butt, which uses the work of Patricia, was I couldn't think of anything to write. So I'm reading Patricia, cursing her out in my mind because she's so good. And then I thought, I'm just going to use this, right? So I pulled out lines I really liked, played with them, moved them around like a puzzle, until they came up with something that I thought made sense. So my answer is I'm not having it. I'm too old. I don't have enough time left. I don't have time for writer's block. Moving on.
Thank you.
My Lynne. It's not, yeah. Mine's it's a little bit different. I like to have something going in a lot of different genres. So like right now I'm working on a novel.
She's just bragging now. I just want to say she's just bragging now. Okay, I'll be quiet.
A novel and a young adult novel, but it's only because when you come up against a wall in something that you sometimes a different part of your brain is fine to switch over here, and always have a children's book working. Just always have a children's book, because what it does for you, it lets you unlatch language. You can be playful, you could be, you know, and it reminds you not to take yourself all that seriously. And also, and this is not, and Lynn, be quiet. I try to do 10 pages every day. and what it is. Listen, no. It doesn't have to be 10 pages of perfect poetry or 10 pages of revision. If I'm about to write a poem about a guy rushing into a fire, and I want to see what a fireman feels like when he rushes into a fire, and I find a magazine interview with a fireman, and I take notes from that interview, it goes into 10 pages. It's 10 pages towards your art, okay? 10 pages of ideas, a snippet of conversation you heard. I mean, you don't tell the people you work for 9 to 5, I'm sorry, it's just not reaching me today, I won't be in. You know, you don't do that. So if you're gonna take poetry seriously, you have to do something every day that feels like punching a clock. Like I did my 3 pages, my 5 pages, my 10 pages, all right, whatever works for you, but just something that moves your art forward a little bit. And then you can say, okay, I did this for myself today, and all the other stuff is around it. Whatever you do for your 9 to 5 is just, you do that just so you can write. So you have money and a roof over your head so you can write. So the writing is the most important thing. And so when just switch gears, just start to write something in another mode, right? Even the thing that's tripping you up, write it as a, try to write it as a limerick, do something. Just don't stop writing. Don't pull the pen up from the paper, and don't, switch the file, but don't take your fingers up from the keyboard. The motion is the thing.
Thank you both so much. That's really, really helpful.
I am muted.
Yes, you were. Your mouth was moving.
You could add something, or we have like a string of questions that are amazing. So did you have a thing to add to the writer's block question? All right, so I'm going to move on because there are so many good questions here. Let's see, Janelle asked about what are your duties as the Poet Laureate of LA, Lynn?
To, I hope I'm getting this right, to represent the city really in everything literary, to try to bring poetry to as many communities, especially those communities that might not necessarily get it. LA, as I'm sure many of you know, is a really large city beyond really the city borders, what we call greater LA. And I want to do as much as I can to try to bring those communities together. I'm already thinking about and working with some folks about a project that talks about what makes your city your city. What do we tear down? What do we keep, and why? And I'm looking at ways to take that into middle school and high school. To give as many readings as I can, to drag Patricia and Amina along with me whenever I do those readings, because they are really good. So that's a good start. That's a good start. I've been in this job for about a month, so we'll see where it takes us all. Thank you for asking. Thanks,
Lynn. Let's see. So that was from Janelle, Tori, and also I think Meg might have said, or somebody said I have the same question. The question is for any of the speakers, what is your writing process like when composing these poems? Do you have a space you go to? Do you have music you listen to, etc.? Do you have sort of a routine of process?
So I've realized that I had such an intimate relationship with the pen and paper that I was always and only trying to write. And I realized that especially within the last, definitely in 2020, but within the last couple years, probably, I've just been doing a lot more vocalizing, just kind of like freestyling. So a part of my process was to, download one of those like voice record apps or something like that. And just as I'm driving or walking into the store or having a conversation with a friend, just record like every little spark of inspiration. And sometimes it will be me going for 2 or 3 minutes and having to start over a bunch of times. Sometimes it'll just be one line that I record and I come back to later. But that's definitely become a huge part of my process. And I think that's important because I found that when I would write a line down, it didn't have the same kind of feeling. It didn't have the same kind of essence. It didn't really capture the the emotion around what I was trying to say. So when I can hear the inflections in my voice, I'm like, oh, I know where I'm going with that. So that has become a really big part of my process. And I think really for me, noticing what kind of rhythm I'm in with my life. I think sometimes I'm really stern and somber and gray and dark. Sometimes I'm really springy and colorful and, like vibey. And sometimes I'm very sing-songy. Like I'll write like that Gil Scott-Heron piece definitely came from a point in me feeling very sing-songy. So I think the music I'm listening to and the conversations I'm having definitely, and obviously inform how I'm writing and what I'm writing. But I think that being able to be aware of that, be aware of what kinds of things you're taking into your space and how that's informing your art is also really important too.
I think for me early on, because I was a legal secretary in a life long ago, I'm a pretty fast typist. And so I would compose on the computer. And I've really gotten away from that and almost, well, not always, nothing is always, but frequently I will write a poem out margin to margin and go back to shape it. Because what I found was happening on the computer was I was imposing line breaks in a way that didn't always let the poem have the shape that it wanted. And in a way where I was seeing it without really seeing its possibilities. So for me, writing margin to margin really has allowed me to go back and have several different ideas about line breaks versus no line breaks. Does it want to be a prose poem? Does it want to be a poem in form? It really helps me a lot to get out of my own way in the poem. That said, sometimes I am very intentional about what I'm doing. So I just try to let the poem talk to me instead of talking to the poem. I think that's the most succinct way that I can put it is, what are you trying to tell me? And to recognize, as Amina said, and I think Patricia said it from her perspective as well, sometimes things will fall into a poem. I have a poem, and if my friend Candace is still on the line, she'll remember this experience. So I'm writing about my birth father, about whom I know nothing. No radio on, no TV on, nothing. Quiet, it's very quiet. It's kind of like this Zoom call, very quiet, right? And all of a sudden, Siri kind of blurts out and says, "Your father is sitting beside me." Excuse me? So I called Candace and said, "You need to get over here right now because something is going on and I don't know what it is, but Siri is like all in my business," right? But I ended up putting that line in the poem because that's what happened. At the moment that I got to where that line should be, I just put in, and Siri sitting beside me said, "Your father is sitting beside me." I don't know what was up with that. So sometimes you just have to go with what the universe is giving you, right? And get out of the way of making it what you thought it should be. No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. So that's, I guess, part of my philosophy, at least.
I would have smashed that phone, buried it, dug up when I buried it, put that in the back of the car, drove it out the next day.
It was so scary.
No. And that's all it's ever said. It never, okay.
I've never had it say anything before or since. So I don't know what was up with that.
Okay, that's weird. All right. Every time I hear that story, I'm like, no, something, she's forgetting something. Something's wrong. Oh, wow. This is weird because like Amina and like Lynn, I tend to write out a story first. It's like, this is what I want the reader to leave with. So I write out the story, the way it's affected me and how I want the reader to feel when it's over. So I don't miss anything. If you start out writing a poem, you are writing and shaping the poem at the same times, and you're editing in your head. And I don't want to do that yet. So the first step is getting the story down. And then like Lynn, I look for line breaks that are going to push the reader through the story. Substantial words on the ends of the line, sometimes a little suspense or whatever. So I look for that. The second step is language. The way I tell my students, if you've heard it before, take it out. There are some things that are inconsequential to our poems. And we get comfortable with them and we just say, oh, it's always said that way. And don't, the whole, I don't want to start preaching. The whole thing is about establishing signature, and you can't do it that way. And the third step is music. And this comes specifically from starting out on stage and really caring about how the words hit the air and how they're received. So I when I'm typing a poem and I'm just starting, I'm saying the whole thing out loud. I read all poems out loud. Anybody's book, anything out loud. I think that's how they're supposed to be heard and received. And so when I was on stage and something would kind of not feel right in my, two words against each other or something, and I'd revise, I was revising for music, and so it's just 3 steps. And then sometimes all that is thrown to the wind and I'm mad about something and I sit down and it just, and I have to read it that night. I have a bad habit of saying, I have a reading tonight, I want to read something new, and writing something that day, but it doesn't always come out well. I'm not teaching anybody anything.
No, that's perfect.
That's not true.
We have 4 more questions, and one of them is directed to Lynn, and it's, I think, a quick answer. So I'm going to ask that. I'm going to try to combine the last 2 questions because I think they're related. So I'm going to ask Lynn this question. Rick wonders, in your poem To Blackness, you wrote,
Yes.
quote, "Some say black is swarthy, gloomy, evil, fiendish, but we all spring from the tribes." His question was, were you referring to the fact that all humans are related to the people from Botswana, Africa, as found in a 2019 interdisciplinary study?
I wasn't referring to Botswana. I did refer, I think, to 4 tribes: Ashanti, Bobo, Fulani, Wolof, and it was an example. It was an example, but there is the theory, I'm not an anthropologist, that we all come from Africa. So, and people can argue about that. I'm not an anthropologist, but I certainly took an artist's license with my lines in that poem.
Thank you, Lynn. So this is a question from Devin, and he's asking, as poets, who are your influences? And then we have kind of a bigger question that I'm going to combine Meg and Spencer's question that we can go around with the 3 of you, but maybe you can quickly, if there's a couple of poetic influences or people you're reading now that you'd want to share, that would be great to hear.
My influences, Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the soundtrack for the Chicago Colored Girl, and Stephen Dobbins. Nobody ever thinks I'm going to say Stephen Dobbins, but I always will say Stephen Dobbins. And this is gonna, because I got started the way that I did, a lot of people would come into the Green Mill in Chicago on a Sunday night, and they weren't named poets, but they were like pump jockeys and people who, taught Sunday school and bagged groceries. And because it was so important to them that they had something they were willing to read in front of a room of strangers and kind of get that tunnel of energy going. I'm a human telling you a story, tell me a story back. A lot of those people whose names I don't know are really, I got so much inspiration from just seeing ordinary folks just stick to it, just keep doing it for what they were getting out of and what they were giving to other people. So I don't know their names, but I always like to kind of pay tribute to that energy that didn't come when I didn't know what I was supposed to be reading. And they were the folks who kept me going.
I would say Pablo Neruda in particular, but the Latin American poets in general, because they have such amazing music in their poetry, which I think we're all saying in one way or another is critical to the sounds of our poems. It will sound a little, I don't know what to say, Patricia, but I want to put in Patricia, but because of the passion in her poetry. I feel like my poems are kind of like room temperature music. I mean, room temperature poems, but she's got the boil, and I'd like to get a little bit more of the boil into my poems. And then on the opposite end, Jane Hirschfeld for the absolute zen. I always feel so mellow after I read Jane. So I would put those forward as strong influences.
Yeah, I mean, definitely these two people that I just performed with, absolutely, just obviously. And I think a lot of my poetic influences are usually musicians, actually. Or writers, like novelists. So I would say like Bell Hooks, Lauryn Hill, Toni Morrison, Stevie Wonder, Nas, absolutely, in my teen years, definitely influenced a lot of my writing. And I would definitely say someone local is Magdalena Gomez. I considered her to be one of my mentors. She probably doesn't know this. If you see this, hi Magdalena. As I was growing up and becoming more comfortable performing, it was that bravery. Her bravery and her absolute, I really don't give a fuck. This is my poetry. You're going to take this and you're going to love it. And people were like, yeah, you're right. I do. So those are a lot of my influences poetically.
Thank you so much. So this, you'll have like a minute each maybe to answer this combined very large question. So Meg was wondering, how do you write about difficult topics that may invoke trauma? Is this process different from your usual writing process? And Spencer asked, I have a question. How have you all found inspiration during the pandemic? Things have been so difficult lately, and sometimes even doing the bare minimum feels unimaginable. Where do you find the strength to write like that? So those are both big, but I felt like they were connected. How do you write out of trauma? How do you write when the bare minimum feels unimaginable? Is this different as a writing process, writing during a difficult time or writing about difficult topics than the usual way that you write?
I don't think it's different from the way I usually write, but it is big, there's a lot there. But in terms of the pandemic, I spent so much of it, as many of us did, being angry and frustrated, overlaid with what was happening politically and with all of the murders that made me even madder. So that now it was funny, as the poet laureate, they said, well, Lynn, could you read something about the pandemic that is hopeful? I said, I don't have anything hopeful, so you better ask somebody else. Because I know I'm supposed to do that, but that's not going to work because you don't want to hear what I have to say. But I wouldn't say the process is any different. But in terms of difficult poems or poems with sensitive subject matter, I think this is where, and Patricia may feel differently, but if you've got a substantial amount of experience, you still benefit from the workshop and or the 1, 2, or 3 persons that you trust to be a sounding board. Like, am I being insensitive? Am I atonal on this? What is your reaction to this? And if I have that kind of poem, I'm going to send it to Patricia and say, okay, did I just step over the line? Or because I know at the end of the day, friendship or no, she'll say, I don't know about that. Or why don't you try this? Whatever. So I think it's important for all of us. And I remember years ago hearing Carolyn Kaiser talk about Maxine Kumin and how, I don't know, at this point, these ladies are in their 70s, 80s, and they were still exchanging poems with each other to feel out whatever the topic was. What do you think? Am I doing the right thing, etc. So it's hard sometimes when you're so close to it, especially if you're emotional about whatever the topic is, to be sure that you are communicating A, clearly, and B, in a way that isn't necessarily kind, but in a way that considers the way the poem may be taken in.
I definitely agree, obviously, with Lynn. I think being able to be considerate to other people's wellness is extremely important. And I think it changes my process while writing, in the fact that I need to be considerate of my own wellness. If I'm writing about a particular traumatic event that I've either experienced directly or indirectly, I do find that, I mean, I cry a lot. I'm a crier anyway, but I cry a lot more. And I need to take it to my spirit a little bit closer before I can really just kind of let the words flow, or else I'll find that the words aren't serving me. They're not nourishing me, and they're not making the art that I intended to make, and that deals with the experience respectfully or meaningfully. So I do more meditation on it. I do more brainstorming on it. I do a little bit more research in terms of maybe how other poets have spoken on it. So it changes my process just a little bit, because I know that it makes me a bit more vulnerable, and therefore sometimes more susceptible to maybe negative self-talk or wanting to run away from the piece before it gets really good. So I think that it is important to also practice that level of self-care so that the poem can thrive outside of maybe your own pain. And when it comes to writing and creating, when it seems hard to even breathe, so I rely on poetry as my breath. I'm like, this is the thing I'm doing. If there's anything that I'm doing, it's writing poetry. I need to write. It's going to be a terrible, ugly poem, but I need to write, and I probably won't even write legibly, but I need to write. So yeah, just believe that the writing is your spirit holding you up. And great question.
Patricia, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Lynne. It is a great question. I think that we've become experts at avoiding pain. That sometimes, I'll be told that, for instance, I was told Incendiary Art was too rough of a book, and that I needed to work some light into it. And the problem is that sometimes it helps not to build an escape. I think what we do is we don't look fully at many things without making sure there's a way out, a quick way out. So I owe it to myself when I'm writing from my own life. If I don't write, I'm in charge of my life story. If I don't write it, I give someone else permission to write it, and I don't want to do that. Permission to interpret it or whatever. It took a long time, and the key, in a different way than Amina was talking about, the key was audience for me. Just realizing that that there may be someone picking up your book or walking into your reading who, even a line that's inconsequential in one of your poems, may make them go home and pick up a pen, may make them say, I felt that way, but I didn't know there was a way to express it, and telling your story fully. I had that line in the poem about my mother. My mother and I just have never gotten along. And it wasn't until I said that out loud that I found out that it wasn't just me, and I found a small community of women who feel that, and I would never have known that. I felt like, oh my God, that's blasphemy. You've got to instantly and automatically love your mother. You got, and so that's true for a lot of things until someone hears them said out loud. And you don't know how many people feel they're alone in how many different ways. And so the poetry, there's a responsibility we have in a way to sort of figure out a way to not let people turn away from certain truths, and it starts with telling our own, I think. And there have been times when, you know, I'll give it to somebody else to read and they go, you know, maybe not. And then I don't want to change the story. I may change the way that I tell it a little bit, but I don't want to weaken it. I don't want to soften it. Because God knows, look how many people just came out of the woodwork. Hateful people just came out of the woodwork in the last year, you know, who've been sitting in their basements, just cursing at their television. And now they're out and about, and they're in your face, you know. And I think it was because we knew they were there, but we were whispering about them all this time, and we shouldn't have been doing that, you know. And with the pandemic, it was really difficult because along with it, I was trying to get students online, and switching over with that, and then trying to write. Luckily, I teach poetry, so I'm always kind of involved in it. And I think I spent about half of the year really kind of worried about my students, who were all hiding behind their little black squares, and how they were doing. And after that, you know how we all said, all of us, right? We said, oh my God, we've got a whole year. Think of all the writing we'll get done. Remember that? I'll have 3 books by the time this is over. And we just didn't, you know. And, you know, when Amina was talking about the spirit and the self-care. And it was when I realized that even when the pandemic wasn't here, I wasn't really taking care of myself that way. I was stressed all the time, you know, and I thought, I think I need to back up and really remember why I write poetry. What's it for, you know? And so I didn't worry about squeezing in a lot of work, but just saying you can actually sit back and breathe and start over in a way, you know. And so that was a little bit more important than just getting a lot of work done. And I learned some things about myself because I had to spend so much time with myself, which I wasn't taking time to do that before. That was a deep question.
Those were really good questions.
They were.
Very good questions. Really
we got
good.
through them, and those were amazing answers. I want to thank you all for bringing us back, the 3 of you, to community, self-care, students, making us want to pick up our pens.
Yeah.
I just feel so filled with gratitude and fed, and thank you. So the 3 of you for reading, for sharing the afternoon with us, for sharing this conversation, everyone who came and is in the room, for your questions and for listening. Yeah, folks are writing, they're going to carry your words with them, which is just so important. And yeah, to bring it back to students, we're here at Westfield, and we're going through what you're going through, Patricia, as teachers, and the students are going through it. And so it's a beautiful full circle to bring it around to. And thank you for staying a little late. I don't want this afternoon to end, but I will say goodbye to you all with so much gratitude and thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Hi,
It was
everybody.
fantastic.
Amina, did you get that message?
I did, yes.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Stay safe.
Stay
Stay
strong.
healthy. Thank you
Bye.
for spending time with us. We had
Yes.
a ball.
Feel free to unmute as you're saying goodbye.
Mhm.
I forgot to say that earlier.
They're all
Thank you.
waiting.
Amazing event.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Great.
Muchas gracias.
Bye,
thank you.
Bye, Devin. Bye,
Bye,
Spencer. Bye,
Devin.
Oliver. Bye, Abby. Bye, Lori.
Thank you.
Bye, Vanessa. Diana.
Bye.
Bye, Vanessa. Diana.
Gracias.
Emily. Karen. Yay.
Bye. Thank you for doing
Hi,
this.
Mom.
That
Thank you
was
so
wonderful.
much.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you
you, Becky,
all.
for bringing that.
So cute. Nobody wants to go.
I don't want to leave.
Alexandra, are you kidding? She was in her car. I was so worried about her the whole time. Don, Susan, Shane, Nancy, Ellen maybe was here. Hi, Ellen.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, bye, guys. I have to go eat now.
Yeah,
I have to. I'm
I
feeling
hope you
peaked.
stay feeling well.
Oh yeah, I hope so too. I think
Yeah.
so. Thanks, guys.
I'm crying. I was
Thank
so
you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Oh, okay, I'm going to stop the recording.